So hello and welcome to Beyond the Things Written. Today I'd like to delve into a little bit of history of the Jehovah's Witness religion. You've studied your Revelation book, as I'm sure many of us have many times. And it's almost comical now when I go through it. It shocked me how many times they actually talked about 1918 in this book. And it's the last great book, you might say, that they mention figurative prominently, 1918. I would like to do a whole series talking about major portions of this book, but I don't know if I'm able to do that in time for their new revelation, grander climax at hand. Somehow there's a new revelation. It's got to be coming out soon. So hopefully I will be able to get it. This is one of the truly worst interpretations I've ever seen on Revelation, equal to a lot of crazy other ones, but just as bad. But what we wanted to talk about today is the Cedar Point Convention, 1922. It figures prominently in history. If you watch their videos, the Advertise, and then this Advertise poster thingy came down and everyone was clapping and everyone, this was such a great day. That was some invigorating day. It's the first trumpet blast. I think the 7 trumpet blasts that, bring about the end of the world, but you get to 7 there. They're all conventions of some sort, which is going to lead to the main part of our video today. So we got these trumpet blasts. So it's the first trumpet blast in 1922. Now, if we go to the Proclaimer's book, which was a history book in the 90s that came out, it had just there on page 260, it had George Gangas there, and he was there, and it just talked about how they had the big ADV letters, and during the discourse, the significance of those letters became evident, and the speaker urged, "Be faithful and true witnesses of the Lord. Go forward in the fight against every vestige of Babylon lays desolate. Herald the message far and wide. The world must know that Jehovah is God and that Jesus Christ is King of kings and Lord of lords. This is the day of all days. Behold, the King reigns. You are his publicity agents. Therefore advertise the King and his kingdom." Right? Jehovah's Witnesses know this. It's in their latest history. Let me put this down. Our latest history videos they made, they just took the selected parts of that. But did you know there's a lot more that was said at that convention? And it's actually contained in a previous history book that goes back to the 50s called Jehovah's Witnesses and the Divine Purpose. So let's take a look at what the whole speech had to say and why Jehovah's Witnesses don't include the rest of the message in the first trumpet blast. Can you imagine that? You got to edit down the first trumpet blast to the parts that you still can get away with. Okay, so we're going to take a look at what Rutherford said at length in the 1922 talk that is often referred to, the Advertise talk. Notice why do you think a lot of it is not included in the Proclaimer's book? And a lot of it is not included in the Faith in Action they have, or whatever it's called. I'm not sure of the new stuff these days, but they have a video about the history. And notice, why do you think a lot of it was taken out? It says there, "The Lord foreknew, of course, that Satan would not peaceably yield the kingdoms of the earth. He knew that there would be a great conflict, and hence he must prepare for that conflict. Gentile times ended, 1914. Now, that part's been taken out, so I'm not sure what was put there. I'm going to take a look and see if I can find out why they took that part out. But anyways, Gentile times ended, 1914. And immediately followed the World War. Again, something they never predicted. They did not predict that. And we will go through the 7 predictions that didn't come true in 1914. It continues, "And since that day, there have been upon earth distress of nations with perplexity. It has been a day of increasing darkness and blackness and suffering. The physical facts then clearly show that the day of preparation was from 1874 forward, and that the day of preparation ended in 1914, and that in 1918, or thereabouts, the Lord came to his temple. This coming to the temple was for judgment, because judgment first began at the house of God. The judgment would be upon the true church and also the nominal systems. So here, the great trumpet blast was proclaiming that the day of preparation was from 1874. Now, why 1874? Well, 1874 figured prominently amongst Jehovah's Witnesses until they changed it. It was thought to be Earth's great jubilee and also the ending of the 1335 days. That is where Jesus' parousia, that's where the presence, as they interpret it, came in 1874. And so it figures prominently still at this time as a Jehovah's Witness. Of course, by the time of the Proclaimer's book, they took that part out, didn't they? So prior to 1878, a date that was held on to at that time, 1874, 1878, 1881. So 1878 still figured prominently here, 1922, evidently approved by God. Prior to 1878, the nominal church had grown mighty in the earth. In 1878, God's favor withdrawn from the nominal systems. Okay, so this is sort of what they would later do in 1918, but they already started doing it. So from that time on, Brother Russell and the brethren who supported him went throughout the land endeavoring to turn the hearts of Christendom back to the childlike faith in God. The nominal church heeded not. In 1914, these systems were boasting of their power and influence and said, "We are rich and we have need of nothing." All of them? Everyone? Every single one was saying that? That's amazing. I wonder how he's got a record of all that. When the World War began in 1914, nominal Christendom raised its voice in favor of the war. All of them? Every single one? That seems strange to believe. And then he continues later on. Thus we see that those of the temple class are clearly designated as the Lord's witnesses at this time to bring a message of consolation to the people, that the kingdom of heaven is here, and that millions now living will never die. Can you see why they wouldn't want to put this in the Proclaimer's book or in their Faith in Action movie series? Because at that time, Jehovah's Witnesses were largely still universalists. Yes, they did not believe that God was coming to destroy everyone except Jehovah's Witnesses. Did you know that? That was a belief that started later on in the 20s and 30s, this exclusivity, that only Jehovah's Witnesses would be saved. Jehovah's Witnesses basically believed that almost everybody would be saved. Now there's going to be a time of trouble, but that was the lower classes against the labor class versus the rich and so forth, this type of idea of Armageddon. We'll get into that in other videos. But they believed that the message was, again, a message of, it says, consolation, that millions now living will never die. Now, they have to be Jehovah's Witnesses. They didn't have to convert, but they were letting the message know that the change was going to happen and that God was going to bring blessings to the earth. This would change. And so you can see one of the reasons why they would take this out. Jehovah's Witnesses changed greatly when they changed that teaching, especially when it comes to the culture. Thus it is seen that God's purpose is that his name shall be magnified, that the people shall know that he is Lord. Thus we see that God's purpose is to have a people in the earth in the time in stress, clearly marked as separate and distinct from all others, standing as his witnesses, fearlessly crying out that the kingdom of heaven is at hand. We'll get to that in a second. Do you believe? Do you believe that the King of Glory is present and has been since 1874? 1874, the parousia, the presence of Christ, began in 1874. Now you know why it's not in the Proclaimer's book. Now you know why it's not in the Faith in Action book. Do you believe that during that time he was conducting his harvest? Do you believe that he has had during that time a faithful and wise servant through whom he directed his work and is feeding the household of faith? That was Charles Taze Russell. Now you know why that's not in the Proclaimer's book or Faith in Action book. Do you believe that the Lord is now in his temple judging the nations of the earth? Again, it's how much longer are they going to keep this 1918 judging of all Christendom? They barely mention it. The Revelation book is one of the last times they really highlighted that 1918 date. Do you believe the King of Glory has begun his reign? Again, that reign was in 1874. Then back to the fields. This is the part they like, right? The back to the fields. Oh, ye sons most high, gird on your armor, be sober, be vigilant, be active, be brave, be faithful, and true witnesses of the Lord. Go back into the fight until every vestige of Babylon lies desolate. That's not the gospel of Jesus Christ, is it? Where did Jesus talk about going through Babylon the Great and all this nonsense? Herald the message far and wide, that the world must know that Jehovah is God and that Jesus Christ is King of kings and Lord of lords. This is the day of all days. Behold, the King reigns. You are his publicity agents. Therefore, advertise, advertise, advertise the King and his kingdom. Now, that's the part they take, because they can still sell that. They can sell that bit. And they can make this history, try to make this history significant, a trumpet blast of revelation, when most of what they were preaching was false, and they don't even believe it today. They don't believe in 1874. They don't believe in 1878. They don't believe that there was a significant preparatory work from 1874 to 1914. They don't believe the last days was from 1799. Did I say that the faithful slave was actually Russell? And even this coming to his temple, that is official Jehovah's Witness teaching, but for how long? How long are they going to keep that? How are they going to get rid of it? How are they going to get rid of that teaching that Jesus came for judgment and chose them? Because again, they put themselves into a bit of a pickle. Because time keeps moving. And it doesn't fit their scenario of the end of the world. So today we discussed why Jehovah's Witnesses, in their Proclaimer's book, their Faith in Action book, and even in their Revelation book, do not share the full message of the 1922 convention, where they believe it's part of prophecy. Yet God was supposedly using a group that was promoting false prophecies, false teachings, but yet somehow the only way you're going to survive is to be associated with this group. Doesn't seem to make sense, does it? You know, before I go, I want to show you one thing about that speech. When Rutherford was speaking, he said there, "Thus we see it's God's purpose to have people on the earth in the time of stress." He didn't say time of the end, because the time of the end was in 1799. Clearly marked as separate and distinct from all others, standing as his witnesses, fearlessly crying out the message, "The kingdom of heaven is at hand." It's extraordinary. A person that reads the Bible would make that claim. Do you know why? Well, let's take a look at our Bibles and why that is a strange claim to make for anyone that wishes to speak or claim to speak for God. Let's take a look at Luke chapter 21. And this is what Jehovah's Witnesses believe is a end-time prophecy. It's a double fulfillment. Nothing you see means what it means. It has fulfillment, but it's got a double fulfillment. Sometimes they even have triple fulfillments, right? Depending on what it is. And let's take a look at what he says there. And he's talking to his apostles about when the temple is going to be destroyed. Now, Jehovah's Witnesses start applying this nation will rise against nation as 1914. But notice Jesus says something before that. What's the first thing that he says when they ask him, when will these things be? And in Luke, he says, so let's start in verse 7. "Teacher, when will these things actually be? And what will be the sign they're about to occur?" And he says, "Look out that you are not misled. For many will come on the basis of my name, saying, 'I am he. The due time is near.' do not go after them. Literally says, do not go after those that say the due time is near. Isn't that something? Isn't that interesting? Give you something to pause, to think about. So once again, thank you for joining us. We did a little bit of history today. Lots more history coming up on Beyond the Things Written. Please like and subscribe and support the channel any ways you can. We'll see you next time on Beyond the Things Written.